welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Picciuto, and I'm very excited to have my good buddy and neighbor, Mr. Raaj Shah, on with us today, actually in studio. Raj, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, John. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been listening for, a few months now to a few of them, and it's good to be here.
Oh, so excited to have you and appreciate the kind words.
Of course.
Can you give the listeners a quick intro to who you are?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Raj. I don't know, 30 years old. I'm a data scientist currently. I work for one of the top sports betting platforms in the country, and it's just an industry that's growing, and I'm excited to be in it. And yeah, just data science has been kind of my thing for a while now, and it's good to, I guess, be in an industry that appeals to me and be able to use my data analysis for something that's enjoyable. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I can't say very many people have that level of work-life appreciation. How does one become a data scientist, data analyst?
So there's like
Computer
no
science major? What was it like?
Yeah, so there's no, I guess, clear-cut approach to the way I did it, and even just all my coworkers, colleagues that are also data scientists, everyone kind of has their own path. For example, mine was economics major in college.
Me too.
And nice, yeah. And I guess about 2 years in, I realized that my favorite aspect of economics was the statistical analysis pieces. So I started taking more like econometrics type courses and really getting into the numerical analysis of things rather than just the theory behind it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what drove me that way. And then after college, maybe my first job was more kind of just a basic production support job, just monitoring applications and things like that. But I guess after maybe 4 years after college, I got my first data analysis job. And I like the core work. The company itself was questionable, but but the core work was good. I was learning a lot of skills, and I realized, one, this is hard stuff, and two, like, I'm good at this, so might as well stick to it. It's something that's high in demand, but the supply doesn't really meet the demand at the moment. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
What was it about, like, data analyst, data scientist, like this sort of path? Like, I'm assuming some point in college you were like, this is something that I want to chase after, right? Like, we both had the same degree. I went in a wildly different way than you did. So, talk to me, like, what that process was like at, like, a young age, being like, this is what I'm into, this is where I want to see myself getting into. Like, what was that sort of like?
So that was confusing for me too, actually, because I had so many different, I guess, dreams of what I wanted to do when I was older, as I was going through school and all that. I remember my first dream was like become a soccer player, right? Professional soccer player.
That's cool.
Must have been like 10 years old at the time. So quickly right as soon as high school started, I realized that dream's not going to happen. So, and I guess after that, it was kind of just feeling like experimenting things here and there, seeing what I like, don't like. I always knew I was good at math, so maybe just trying to figure out something related to math that I could do.
That would be enjoyable and not boring.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I guess data analysis just worked out because of the things I learned in college, and then I guess just how my life just kind of went forward. There was a brief time after college for a few years where I wasn't working as a data analyst, and I was kind of, this is completely random too, I was like in the music scene, wanting to become a musician. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
what do you play?
I play bass guitar.
Sick.
And I sing. So
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still do it?
I still do both, but not nearly as much as I used to. It was basically like a second job before.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would imagine that your current day-to-day job doesn't allow for very much free time. Like, do you work like 10 hours a day? Like, is it crazy?
It luckily isn't too crazy. One of their most important, like, core values of the company is work-life balance.
Wow.
So they always try to keep it under 40 a week.
Wow.
We'll see when football season gets started, but yeah, I know they said it gets like 10 times as busy. So
Yeah, you got 1 week of
Exactly.
non-craziness.
Exactly. But yeah, I've been able to balance it well, and I think a big thing is just the industry itself, right? It's still not legal everywhere, right? Sports betting.
Yeah.
3 of the 4 biggest states in the country, California, Texas, Florida, it's not legal yet.
Wow.
And once
Florida
that,
not being legal is
yeah, it makes no sense.
you could do anything else you
exactly.
want there. Except bet on
Except
sports.
sports betting. Yeah. But
That's wild.
once that all takes off, I assume eventually it'll be legal in every state, and
We're getting there.
it'll just boom. So
It's wild. So, assuming the FBI is not listening to this podcast, I did a ton of illegal gambling in my early 20s, right? And I'm not betting hundreds of thousands of dollars. A few $100s a football game during football season was like what my go-to thing was. And man, I just can't imagine. I think I would have been in a better position financially in my life had it been legalized and regulated, because there was this weird situation when you were gambling, at least when I was a kid, where I would lose money for the week. Like, let's say I lost like $1,000. But, you don't meet your bookie on Monday, so we'd normally meet up like Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'd either be up a couple bucks or down a couple more bucks, and I'd be like, oh, let's just let it ride. And it's like, oh my God, I've got like a bookie credit card that I'm just like,
Nice.
it's because like, so I haven't really found myself getting super into online gambling. Like, I've bet the Super Bowl, some of the major college football games, World Series stuff, like very, very small stuff there, and like barely touched the casino thing because,
right, yeah.
jeez, I mean, it just seems crazy, right? Although it's wild, there's like fucking real people doing like dealers.
Oh yeah, there's
wild.
real dealers just sitting in their home, in their closet or whatever they got set up, just doing it. And
It's so weird.
It is interesting because the casino aspect, I guess we have more control as a company as to the outcome.
Sure.
So you're kind of just playing to lose
100%.
if you're doing casino.
Yeah. I mean, when you go to a casino, you're playing to lose,
Exactly.
and now you're doing it online, which clearly they have a much better edge.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's wild. But I do think like if it was legalized at a younger age, like I probably wouldn't have gambled a lot. Like
I see.
I had an unabashed gambling problem, and not a problem. It's not like I didn't lose any limbs or anything. But like I would bet every football season, I would lose tons of money, and it'd be like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, why are you doing this?" But it was just like super normal. But like now, I guess you reach a certain age, and you're like, cool. It's like I can watch a game and get the rush from watching it and not having to have $500 on the Giants to win.
Exactly.
Plus, they're just going to let me down anyway.
Yeah, at this point in time, the Giants are pretty terrible, so don't want to bet
on
them.
Future looks bright.
Exactly.
It's a very cool industry to be in, and right now, and it's obviously like growing and expanding rapidly. What was the appeal about the industry that made you want to get involved in it?
So the appeal was, one, the fast-growing aspect, and then other than that, it was... So I've always loved sports since I was a kid. I've also had the thing where I was betting too much on games and all that, so I know how that is.
You ever get like 2 a.m. Polish football, like soccer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's South Korean league?
Yeah, that's when you have a real problem. Yeah.
That's when you know, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I had the same interest. I love sports. I'm a huge stat guy. One of my favorite things is just analyzing stats of players, especially in football. And I know so much about sports. Just I follow it outside of work already so much, and I have for years, that I said to myself, sports is such a big industry. They need data scientists. Every aspect of sports needs data analysis. So why not get into that? It's commercially big, and yeah, it's just going to keep growing, the betting part, as it gets legalized, as more people are aware of it. I think even now we're starting to move over to other countries to bet on U.S. sports. So it's just getting really big now. And I think the jump into it was a little scary and felt risky.
Sure.
Just because
it was so new.
It was new.
Sort of.
Yeah. Like our company is only like 3-4 years old. So, yeah.
Oh, well, that's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that the way everything is going now, it's a promising future. And yeah, like I said, it was risky because I guess I was so comfortable in my previous job. It was for a bank in New York. Like, they're always going to be there, but I felt like I was just working a soulless job,
Sure.
Just all I was doing, all my data analysis, all the reports I was generating, any changes that were being made to the company was all basically to make the wealthier like the wealthier. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
make
all
the
I
bank
was
more
doing.
money.
Exactly. And I was
And
just
now you're in an industry where you just want to take the money out of hardworking Americans' hands.
exactly. I'm doing the exact opposite thing now. You know what I mean?
No, it's the same. It's the same.
It's the same, but people might not be able to do it now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because I like the marriage of analytics and sports a lot. I'm super interested in how like there's a huge analytics push on the sports side of things, not necessarily the gambling side, which there obviously is.
Yeah.
But the amount of front office positions that are being created on a yearly basis in every major sports league across the country and even in worldwide is awesome because they're looking at tangible, measurable aspects to the sport that now need, the intelligence behind it and how to analyze, well, he can run this fast and do this. It's fucking wild.
It is wild. And I don't know if you've noticed, like, even in the big major sports leagues in the country, like all the new GMs and coaches,
Yeah.
they just look like nerds.
They
Like,
are.
They are.
They're
nerds.
all Harvard
Yeah.
MBAs. They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
MIT. I mean, not all, but a lot of them are
Yep.
coming from a non-traditional sport path to the front office.
Exactly. And I think that has given me hope also because that is my goal, is to become front office of
cool.
a certain, whatever team. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But that's been my kind of my end goal now that I'm in the sports industry. So yeah, seeing the nerds take over like Miami, San Francisco, just hired dudes that look just like me. So,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah. What's his name? McDaniel, right?
Yep, Mike McDaniel. Yeah,
He's a nerd, and he smokes a ton of weed too, which is
Exactly.
hilarious.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
wild. Yeah, that's cool. My working career has obviously followed a non-linear path, right? Like for a very long time, it was all very financially driven until during the pandemic when I lost my job. I was like, well, what the fuck do I want to do with my life? And you start realizing like what's important and what you want to be, and you set new goals for yourself and like sort of like envision what your future could be like. And I'm like doing shit that I would never have imagined as far as 2 years ago. Like, it's wild. Like, my life is great. I've literally built everything that I want for myself, and it gets better every week, month, and hopefully year. Like I'm extremely lucky with that. So when you look at something like wanting to work in the front office for any sports team or whatever, do you have like a plan to get there? Like, do you start like goal setting and putting yourself in a position to get there?
So that's my next step, right? I guess because I've been here at this new job for about 3 months now.
Oh shit, so new.
Yeah, it's so new still.
Dude, it feels like it was so long ago that you told me you started.
I know, it's time just like, flying by.
It's crazy.
But yeah, it's just I guess that would be the next step. I'm still learning so much about our own industry, just the betting aspect of everything. It's quite overwhelming. It made there's millions of records I have to look at every single day. Every bet placed, money lost, won, all that is.
So you're aggregating data to like further the casino's edge based on like lines and stuff like that?
Exactly.
Wow.
And then also seeing like a certain game is what's the net gross revenue? Are we positive, negative? Is there anything that can be changed? Or should we just scrap that idea completely?
That's wild.
So there's a lot of things like that, as well as keeping like the high rollers on our platform
Versus gone somewhere else.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's just wild how like data intelligence has permeated through every industry and will continue because at the end of the day, it's a dollars game, right?
Exactly.
And like your company needs to make sure more people are placing more bets for higher amounts of money and inevitably losing. But yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, what are you doing in terms of setting up your future for the next thing? Like, do you have like a 1, 3, 5 year plan? Is that sort of like how you look at it?
So yeah, that I definitely have a 1-year plan for now. Basically, kind of just revisit where I am, I guess 9 months from now, and see how the 1 year went. Do I want to maybe stay within sports betting? Maybe my mind will change by then if I see the industry is really picking up and I learned so much more within the next 9 months. So there's either that, but if not, my next step would be probably to try to get into one of the major sports leagues like the NFL, MLB, or NBA, or even NHL. But I guess like that would be the next step. Just get either a data analysis job there or a people manager position, and kind of just go from there. And then once I'm in there, I have found that it's all about networking.
100%.
Everything is about
That's
networking.
life.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because so like before we got on the podcast, well, before you came up today, like a friend of mine who's been on my podcast before, like sent me 2 different group chats with like another individual in each chat where they were hooking me up with another person to be on my podcast. I was like, I never would have met this person. They live in California. They're strangers to me. We're not digital acquaintances. We just know this one person in common, and I'm going to have 2 new people on my podcast because of them. And it's just one of those examples of, it's not what you know in life, although being a data scientist certainly helps and intelligence helps.
Yes.
It's who you know.
Exactly. It's about who you know.
Yeah.
It's about how you present yourself to others.
Completely agree. Yeah. It's one of the it's one of those lessons that I wish I learned earlier in life, like how important fostering like healthy boundaries and relationships can foster your career for years and years to come. Like that would have been a great lesson for 25-year-old John.
Oh, same here. 25-year-old Raj could have used that same lesson, but we made it. So.
Yeah, we made it. Yeah, that's funny. That's cool, dude. I think it's just such a wild like sort of path to like go from economics to like sports betting, which probably shouldn't surprise me that much.
I guess even your story is similar. It's just completely
non-linear.
different trajectory, right? Economics to photography. Mm-hmm. So.
What do you think it is about your life specifically that has gone like perfectly according to plan and something that like you could never have imagined?
Something that's gone perfectly according to plan might be nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that
I don't
funny?
think anything has. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't plan on living in like this building here in Montclair like 2 years ago.
Well, the building didn't exist.
That's true. The building did not exist, but I did not expect to like be where I am career-wise, just socially. I've met so many new people the past year or two, and it's made a huge difference in my mood, just the way how I feel when I wake up, just everything. And I think, what was the other half of the question?
Or in like you answered it already. It was basically like what went according to plan and what didn't. And you're like, nothing really went according to plan.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's what's the expression like the God laughs at the plan or something. Like best laid plans and like nothing ever really comes out the way it's supposed to be. I'm a big believer of everything in life sort of happening as it should when it should.
Yes.
It like my life certainly has taken zero targeted approach to what I'm doing now, right? Like nothing about it. But in a weird way, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and where I'm meant to be. And I am a big believer that when you start doing the things that you're supposed to be doing in life and like connecting with the right people and having the right conversations and just putting yourself in the right place at the right time leads to like growth, whether it is relationships, whether it is friendships, whether it is work, like, right? Like when you are constantly putting yourself in the right position, you will inevitably be successful in whatever you're putting yourself in that position to be.
100%. I agree with that. And sometimes you're working towards it without even realizing, which is cool. I think there's a John Lennon quote that just goes, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
That's what I was looking for.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. And that's how my life went. My 20s were a complete roller coaster up and down. So battled so many inner demons and just kind of had to just make it on my own.
Mental health stuff or like
mental health stuff, and family stuff.
Wow.
Because of the mental health. But yeah, it was just a lot. Like I guess after college is when everything kind of hit me. Maybe a year afterwards. I guess college was probably the best time of my entire life.
Most people's.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone, you're in a city with people your age.
Yeah.
And that changed immediately afterwards, going out on my own, basically having a 3-4 hour commute on the bus round trip and then working 8 hours. So I hated everything and felt just lost and didn't have a social life at all because I didn't have time.
Yeah.
So I kind of, just started feeling alone, depressed, all that. And, when you're not aware of it or you don't address it, it just keeps getting worse and worse.
You're subconsciously extremely aware of it, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, I've been there. I'm a big proponent of mental health.
Yes.
I've done therapy for years now, and I never had, like, very negative thoughts of, like, killing myself or anything like that. But, like, I just had really horrible anxiety and depression, and it was all tied to, like, the pandemic and losing my job and like the sense of worth and like all that shit. And it almost happened at like the perfect time. I feel like if that had happened in my 20s, I probably would not have been able to deal with it as well. it's such a young, impressionable time, and having those feelings is like probably the most common thing on earth. But also, like, you don't have the tools in your toolbox to handle all of those things without going to get the professional help.
That's exactly what it was. I was not ready for any of it because this was well before the pandemic, and I was probably like 23, 24 years old. And yeah, I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really know what depression even was fully. I've heard of it, obviously, but didn't know like people that dealt with it. I was the first one I knew dealing with it. And then, yeah, it just got so bad to the point where, you know, I did have thoughts of like, why am I here? Like, what is the point of going onwards? And there's like, I'd say 2017 maybe, or 2018. That was probably like, 2017 was the worst year of my entire life.
Personally, work-wise?
Personally and work. There was no work. I was just not in a place to work mentally.
Damn.
And, you know, the family thing is bad. One, being like in a traditional Indian family doesn't help with like mental health and things like that, like the views on it. So
you didn't feel like you had a support system.
I had no support system from my family, pretty much. It felt like.
Yeah.
And they kind of just lost trust in me completely, you know, to the point where they wouldn't allow me to be at home. The reason they lost trust is because I was numbing all these feelings with substances, right? So,
which is a pretty normal path.
Exactly. And, you know, I went to get treatment, came out. Parents were just like, you can't live here. So
that's tough.
I was pretty much, I had no money. My net worth was completely negative at that time, and just found like government sponsored housing in Dover.
Wow.
And lived there for a little over 6 months, probably 8 months.
Wow.
And yeah, it was terrible. Like going, all you can afford is maybe $3-4 of food a day from the gas station. Living in a neighborhood where, honestly, high crime. The main language was Spanish. Like I couldn't communicate with everybody. It was just tough. But that really
was that your rock bottom.
That was my rock bottom. That's when I was like, I was living in, you know, like a closet-sized room with another person.
Wow.
And that dude, he ended up overdosing and dying. So I saw at least 4 people just die while living there.
Jesus.
And it's heartbreaking, honestly, even if you don't know them well. Yeah. And then you kind of do know them a little bit because you form a connection, and then they're just gone. But yeah, that really made me stronger. Made me lose a lot of hope in humanity at that time. Honestly, I was like, you know, nothing's gonna work for me. And
I mean, it's like the hard thing is, like, I can relate to that tremendously. And although not having experienced similarities in any way, shape, or form, you go through your own sort of demons and ups and downs like that. Like I've been in those positions. The way I went through it in my 20s was I just was spending money, right? Like I was like numbing myself with buying shit and like retail therapy and like pretending, right? Like I was pretending to be something else to mask all of the insecurities and anxieties that I was feeling inside. Like I didn't have a substance abuse problem. I didn't have, you know, the family aspect, right? Like I didn't have that. But like if I could have like gone back and like shaken, you know, like 25-year-old Raj and been like, dude, you have like help, support, like see where you're going to be, you know, fucking 5-6 years from now. It's like, it's just frustrating because like a lot of people don't get to the point where you are today, right?
Exactly.
Like you mentioned. And it's like we all live this chaotic, hard existence, and all we do is make it harder for each other.
We do. Yeah. And instead of leaning on each other, you just feel alone. And at that time, I felt like I couldn't trust anybody. So that was rough.
How do you go from, you know, a closet $3 a day to like, what was that experience like? How do you pull yourself up, you know, from the bootstraps and get yourself out of something like that?
Yeah. So I guess there were people. It wasn't my family. Mm-hmm. But there were a handful of people that I kind of just feel like I owe my life to.
Wow, yeah.
And they really had my back no matter what. I never took them up on these offers, but they're like, if you need a couch to stay on, whatever, anything like that. And the main thing I just took them up on was someone to talk to. And that's all I really wanted from them. And they were there for me when my family really wasn't, right? So, these 5, 6 people maybe, I'll always remember them, like hold them in high, I don't know, regard, even though some of them are not part of my life at all anymore. But just the influence they have when they entered, that was the biggest thing, was those people.
Yeah.
Then after that, I was able to start thinking, how can I improve from here? There are people who care about me, that believe in me. And I always knew I was, like I said, like good at math. So I said to myself, there's got to be something. Math and technology, 2 things I'm good at and knowledgeable on. So I guess after that little time period, I got like a basic job, like Geek Squad. I was a Geek Squad agent, fitting, right,
Yeah,
for me.
nice, yeah.
And that was good. I got a lot of exposure to technology. Even talking to people was a huge thing. And
Yeah, breaking out of your shell.
Exactly. And then because of my experience working with the tech devices, Samsung gave me an offer to be a data analyst at their corporate headquarters in Ridgefield Park.
Wow.
So that was a junior position. Wasn't paying super well, but it was a step in the right direction. And I excelled. I put so much effort into that. I was completely just driving forward at that point.
Yeah.
And within a year, I got a call from, a bank in New York, and they were like, "Here, we'll offer you a senior position. We really liked what we saw in the way you presented yourself in the interview." And just like that, I was making more than double what I was making a day before. So that changed my life completely, and that gave me confidence. And I was leading like a small team also in that job. And just, gave me confidence, feeling good with people. And then, you hear, as I was meeting other people outside of work, I meet people who are doing things they love. And that was a new thing for me too, seeing people actually experiencing that. So I said, why can't I do that? And, I heard someone's story maybe like 6-7 months ago, and I was just like, all right, that's it. I gotta go forward and just do it. And within half a year, I landed this job, and that was it. And
I mean, dude, listen, man, like, obviously we're friends. We hung out a dozen times in the last year or whatever. I had no idea about any of these experiences that you had. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what's the beauty of why I do this podcast, man. Like, you get to learn about people in a way that, breaks down barriers of, normal life conversations, right? Like,
exactly.
It's not like you would be normally forthcoming with like those types of trials and tribulations, but the beauty in that is like how relatable it is. So many people who are listening to this can be like, I've been in this position. I've had these self-doubts. I've had these really hard situations in my life. And like, maybe something you just said is going to positively impact someone else who's going to be going through something like that. I think you also said something which was crucially important that, again, I wish I'd learned a little bit earlier in life. It's just like what is really important in the world, in life, is people, right? Like at the end of the day, you can make millions of dollars, you can drive nice cars, you can have fancy shit, but if you're alone, does it matter? Like, is your life worth living? Like, I know that's like morbid, but the truth of the matter is like everything that I'm doing in my life is because the people in my life, like without the support of my friends and family, without, the amazing sort of support system that I've had, over the last 2 years and, 30 something before that, I could never have taken the chances that I've taken in my life. I could never have taken the risks that I have. I could never have grown so much in the amount of time that I have and found the appreciation for those people had it not been for them being there. And it's like, it's truly so cliche, but it's true. Like, life is what you make of it, and it's because of those people that you put around yourself that allow you to grow to your highest potential.
Exactly. Yes. And that it's a lesson I learned the past few years. You asked me at 25, I wouldn't have known any of that. I wouldn't have been able to tell you, how important relations with other people are. I always thought like, yeah, I can just make it on my own, which I cannot.
No.
I've experienced that. So,
There are very few people who can, man. I mean,
yeah.
like, it's, not very many people. I mean, those who are born on third base, sure, it's easy to hit a home
Yep.
run when you're
Yep.
parked on third, right? If you're by yourself, if you're alone, unless you have immense drive and immense desire to prove a lot of people wrong, it's not easy. People need support. People need people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's really incredible, man. Man, that really blew me away. I'm not going to lie. Like, just that is a level of, overcoming obstacles that I can't directly relate to. It really puts into perspective how lucky I am and like how lucky a lot of people I know are because they haven't had to deal with stuff like that. That's hard. Like,
Yeah.
it is hard. What was like the best piece of advice that you received when you were going through that kind of helped you, kind of power through?
That's a good question. I think I was mostly just clinging on to hope at the time, but I'm trying to think if there's any specific piece of advice. I think someone once told me, like, this might sound a little morbid, but like it is applicable to my past, that like suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
So that really stuck with me for some reason. And I think that it just kept me going. Even if it just was one day's worth of hope, it helped me get to the next day. And I think, the one day at a time advice at that time was very crucial.
Yeah.
I couldn't think a week ahead. I didn't know what was going on. I was just like, let me just get through this day, get to the next day, go to my, recovery meetings, all that stuff, and just
Survive.
At this point, do what other people are telling me to do, because I whatever I was doing wasn't working at the time.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, those are some of the things that helped me. And, I think you had mentioned it earlier that how important therapy has been to you. That something I forgot to mention. That has also been very key.
Sure.
I still go. I've been going for years now. So
yeah, I was very, to a negative degree, anti-therapy for a long time. Oh, why are people, all they want to do is complain about their problems. All they need to, quit your bitching, like go fucking to work, like stop your complaining, like life's not that hard. Until it was that hard for me, or until I realized that I was just masking the shit that I was dealing with like a rose-colored glasses of everything's fine, and I'm, but like the truth of the matter is that like having that unbiased person whose only job is to listen to what you're going through and give like somewhat reasonable advice or thoughts on the things that you're telling them is super important. It's like, you can have that relationship with a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a friend, but they've got biased outcomes and opinions about what you're telling them, right?
Yes.
But if you tell your brother or sister that you have a huge drug problem, obviously they want you to be okay. But like, if you're telling them about negative thoughts and stuff, these are difficult conversations to have. And sometimes having a completely unbiased human being on the other side of it to be that sounding board can be tremendous in your growth.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that was exactly what it was. It was someone just focused on me. I really don't know anything about the therapist, right? And then they just, as they get to know me, they see patterns that I'm I guess exhibiting, and I guess they just kind of give me solid advice. Say, hey Raj, you were doing this, and this is the third time you've done this exact behavior. Maybe it's something we should work on, or maybe there's something deep down,
isn't it
layered
funny?
Underneath.
Isn't it funny? Like, I always laugh at that when I have a gentleman when he's like, dude, we've talked about this before, right? And I'm like, really? Like, it always feels so new to me.
Exactly.
And it's like, wow. He's like, no, this is, we've talked about this before. And like, let's figure out, like, I didn't realize. So like, I do this thing all the time, and I don't know if this is one of my neuroses or not, but like, I'll do laundry, right? And I'll take the laundry out of the dryer and I'll put it on my bed. And then when I go to bed, I'll take it off my bed and I'll put it on my couch. And then the next morning when I'm having my coffee, my clothes are on my couch, I'll move it from my couch to my chair, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll live on my chair for like 3 or 4 days until I'm like, oh, I should put it away now, right? So it's like that level of why am I doing that, right? The avoidance tendencies, like all these things that I didn't know were like not mental illness, but like whatever
I know
you
what
want to
mean.
call it.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea. So it's like until I have this conversation with this person, I never realized that these are something that like, these are like ADHD things, like fucking I would have never known. I'd just be like, I'm lazy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how I would have been. I'm just like, I am lazy. Why
Yeah.
am I lazy?
Yeah.
But instead of, I guess behavioral pattern is a good way of describing it. And yeah, there's something underneath you that we can't get to on our own. We have no idea. Our mind's too cloudy, and we just have too many things like obstacles preventing us from thinking that deep down about ourselves.
100%. One of the great lessons that I've learned is the power in words. Like, right? So like I used to write a lot on the internet, like about like dating and relationships and even like when I was in high school, I'd write about like relationships and stuff like on paper, right? Not like the internet wasn't even really a thing then.
Yeah.
But like, so I would write and I would write and I would write. And then sometime, 5 or 6 years ago, I stopped writing. Like I lost the ability to like self-narrate, right? Like to like or really self-reflect, right? I couldn't write down the things I was thinking and feeling. And my therapist was like, you need to really be diligent about it. And the way that we went about it was like in the morning, it's like when I woke up, I'd write about things that I'm grateful for. And when I went to bed, I'd like write about the day. Like, was it good? Was it bad? What can I improve upon? And like all these things. And then taking those each day and then like reviewing them, like at the end of the week being like, oh, like, it fostered a dialogue with myself that allowed me to keep myself in check and like hold myself accountable for like everyday shit, which I would avoid at times. And like, well, I could be like, oh, John, you drank on Monday. Why'd you drink on Monday? Why didn't you wait till Friday? You know what I mean? Like shit like that like I wasn't doing until he taught me to do it again.
Yeah. And it is, I feel like having those mundane everyday things down is very important before you can even start focusing on the other issues.
100%.
Like if you have to have I guess, clear or an environment with clarity, not a cluttered environment to have your mind start thinking that way.
What's funny? That goes back to like the clothes thing. Like the cluttered space that you live in can be detrimental to like mental clarity, to being able to like work on things, to be having clear mind and thought when you're going through your job, when you're like, oh, I'll just pile this shit here and I'll pile this shit there. And that was another great thing. Learned how to like declutter your space. I don't need fucking 1,000 books in my apartment. They go into storage, right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because again, I'm in a place where like I've learned so much in just the last 2 years. It's like literally tomorrow, September 1st, 2020, I got in my car and I started driving around the country taking pictures, fell in love with photography. Like my life changed permanently 2 years ago. Oh, wow. And yeah, it's crazy. It's not that much time.
It's not that long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's funny because, I'm just now very much on the verge of everything that I've been working for 2 years coming to fruition. Right.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where it's gone according to plan completely and yet not even remotely close to the plan. Right.
That's true. Yeah.
If someone would have told me 2 years ago, it's going to take you 2 years to like be comfortable in what you're doing and who you're being and like all the stuff that you're doing, I'd be like, yeah, it's not that long, but like 2 years is a long time, especially like when you're like, a lot of times I was paying rent last year and I was paying with savings because I didn't make rent money in a month. As a freelance photographer, if you're not working, you're not getting paid. So like there were times last year where I was like, oh, savings, up, savings, up, savings. That's like not as a very uneasy feeling, but to like have then now been in a position where I'm like 2 years into this and like it's working, right? Yeah. Like it's like if it's rewarding on a scale that I've never felt before.
I agree. Yeah, where I'm at now is I don't think I've ever been this happy my entire life. Yeah.
Dude, it's wild because man, like all I cared about when I was younger was having a lot of shit. Like nice car, nice watch, like fucking 1,000 pairs of sneakers. Like at the time I didn't realize it was, avoidance, whatever behavior or whatever thing. It was like a, Band-Aid on a bullet hole, right?
Exactly.
Like I was filling a hole with stuff. But I'm just like genuinely complacent and happy on a scale that it's hard for me to like not appreciate, but articulate. Like I'm immensely appreciative of where I am today, because I didn't know where I was going to be 2 years ago. When I lost my job in the pandemic, like I think people forget that shit felt like, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. When I lost my job, I was like, oh man, like I'm fucked. Like I fucked myself big time. Like it's over. I'm never going to work again. I'm going to be bankrupt. Like I'm going to be living fucking my parents' basement for my entire life. Like I thought it was over. And like to be in the position now where, you know, I'm heading into the second year of my own apartment. Like I'm successful, not just like personally, but financially and like in ways I couldn't measure. I'm just happy. Yeah. It's like, it's underrated to be cognizant of where you're feeling, right? Like I am so appreciative of the fact that I'm able to check in and be like, are you happy today? Because I know what it really feels like now.
Yes, that's a good point. Now that we actually know what our version of feeling that happy is, we can appreciate when we see it in others, right? Instead of feeling bad about it.
You know what's funny, man? I've always had a pretty good bullshit like reader like on people and like understand like where people are coming at and like why they are a certain way. And that skill has been sharpened tremendously as I've been able to realize myself like what is important. And you start realizing that like a lot of people pretend. Like it's a lot easier to go on Instagram and post about how great things are with, you know, me, my wife and husband and 19 kids and white picket fence and the carpool lane. And like people don't talk about like, oh, I didn't sleep at all last week. And like I'm drinking 3 bottles of wine a night to get to bed. You know what I mean? Like it's very easy to pretend to be happy.
It is. And I've noticed one thing compared to like 5 years ago is I can spot that more easily now in people. Be like, all right, that guy acts like everything's okay, like everything's going well, but no, because I could see the behaviors that I was exhibiting back then. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like a superpower almost, but I think to a degree of where I am able to see that in people as well, and I'm much more inclined to be like, hey, are you all right? Like, do you want to talk? Right? Like you can, like I would have not avoided the difficult conversations with friends and family back in the day, but like I would just laugh it off. Ha ha ha. Like it's fine. Ha,
exactly.
Ha, ha.
Yeah, I would do the same.
But like now, like I want to know why you're feeling this way. I want to know, are you okay? Right? It's actually genuinely important to me because again, it goes back to the lesson that you learn with time. It's people, right? Yeah. That's what life is. A life that is important and filled with beautiful, amazing things is filled with people. It's not stuff, it's people.
It's people, yeah, it is. And it's sharing experiences and just sharing happiness, too.
Yeah.
I love sharing happiness. It's something completely new to me.
Yeah.
And even something that's new to me is like being okay without having to strive for something really needs to be improved about myself.
Like what?
Like, for example, 5 years ago, I was like, I need to get my mental health ready. I cannot take any substances like this. I have to really focus on getting a career, like completely. That was all my focus. Now it's like, maybe I could just go to the gym a little bit, get some more muscle. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's small things like that. So it's nice to, I guess, my anxiety from the past still comes through like, all right, Raj, something's wrong here right now.
Well, it's like you're out of sorts because everything's good.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that feeling. It's weird because like you get to a position where you feel like the other shoe should be dropping.
Yep.
Okay, this is all going a little too good, a little too according to plan. Like this is not right.
Yeah. And then you start wondering and becoming skeptical about yourself instead of having, I guess, self-belief.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, I have to still work on developing is confidence, self-belief.
See, I've always had that self-confidence and like to a rational degree. Like I think that's partly why I've been able to build all what I have in the last 2 years because I've always believed that I was going to be eventually doing the thing that I was meant to be doing and loving it. Like for a long time, I thought that too, but it was in other ways. It was manifesting itself through like financial ways. And now it has manifested itself in like I get to do the thing that I love most in the world for life. Right.
Yeah. And do you think that losing that job during the pandemic was needed?
It It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
In hindsight,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Like at the time, like I can't stress enough. Like it's just really hard to like go back into that frame of mind when I got fired. So there was a brief period prior to losing my job where I was going to the doctor because I was having like a weird heart thing, right? Like for context, both my grandfathers died of heart attacks. My dad has had 6 bypass heart surgeries. So like for me, having 2 male relatives who died in their 40s from heart related stuff, I was like, oh my God, like this is it. I'm going to die. Like, right. Turned out to be nothing.
Yeah.
As it usually does. But the day I lost my job, I was wearing a heart monitor. Like literally, I was wearing a heart monitor. And I asked my doctor, I was like, hey, what was my heart doing at like Friday 4:45 p.m. and my heart decreased? Because I think like whether it was subconscious or whatever it was, like rather than being in that like fight or flight situation, I was like, I relaxed. I was like, I don't have to pretend to know what I'm doing anymore. I don't need to pretend. I felt like a fraud in the job because I was put in a position to do something that I've never done before. And I was like one of those things where I was like, I could fake it till I make it. I've done it my whole life, but I couldn't, right? Like I just failed. And like, that's okay. You could admit failure. Like I failed. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think what I went through when that happened was a sense of relief. Like the jig is up. I was found out. I was relieved. So the immediate after effect of that was chaos, right? This is it. Like my life's over. Like, people were getting laid off, furloughed. Like the world was in a fucking insane place. So I was like, this is bad. Like this is about as bad as it could be. And in a lot of ways, everything that I went through, like I joke, 2020 was the best year of my life financially and the absolute worst year of my life on every other measurable metric.
Level. Yeah.
And if it weren't for that, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, that's true. And same here, like the pandemic, during it, there's a major event. For me, it was a breakup and just destroyed me. I was living alone. No one wanted to hang out because of the pandemic being in its peak. Mm-hmm. So I'm just sitting there like, what am I doing? What do I do? And yeah, you just learn a lot about yourself when you're put in those situations.
Yeah.
And I think like how we're describing the pandemic was challenging for us. I'm sure it was for pretty much everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah, in their own ways. But, it changed the world a lot. See, now we can do things like this. Like you could work from your home completely now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. So I think I try to take some positives out of this.
Yeah, I think, you take the morality out of the pandemic, right? Obviously, there was a tremendous loss of life, which is horrible. But to a lot of degrees, I think, I hope that it put into perspective the importance of what's important, right? That was so dumb. But the importance of what's important being that, like, you figure out when you can't leave your house and you can't see people, who's going to be there for you?
Yeah.
You found out very quickly, like, who are the important people in my life? Who can I rely on? Who can I trust to, like, not be going to parties during a pandemic and, like, oh, God, I could get this disease and kill my parent. Like, you know what I mean? It put into perspective what was truly most important in life. And I think for that, I'll always be grateful.
Yeah, same here. Did you ever have moments during the pandemic where... Were you living alone during it?
No, I was with my family.
Okay. Maybe that was one difference because there were times where I said to myself, like, I feel so terrible mentally. I'd rather just go out and risk getting COVID just because I need to see people.
I felt that way too, but my fear was getting it and killing my parents, right?
Yeah.
So like because I was in a situation where where I was in a situation where like my doing that would have probably, I couldn't. I think I can't underestimate how absolutely lonely I felt during those times. Like I did all the, like, I don't know about you, you broke up during the pandemic. Yep. I'd been single for like 6 or so months leading into the pandemic. But like doing the FaceTime dates and stuff, and like all that shit, it was the worst.
It was the worst.
The worst. It's like laughably terrible. And I'd never, even though I was with people, right, I had never felt so alone, right? Yeah. because you're not going out, you're not seeing friends, you're not doing social, you're not leaving your house. Like it's hard to like really emphasize how truly alone I felt, and I had people. I can't imagine what it would have been like had I been here on my own.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, definitely it was challenging, but you know, where we are now, 2022, it seems like everything's kind of getting back to normal. Somewhat. Monkeypox is now back here, which looks even more fun. But
you know what the expression that I said before, having tools in my tool bag. I've got a lot more tools in my tool bag these days to deal with like whatever life hands me, right?
Exactly.
Like I'm not wishing negative things on me at all. I want the exact opposite, but I'm now in a position where I can roll with the punches. I have the tools to be able to combat life, right? And like I don't think 2 years ago I did. 2 years ago I was in a dark place. And admittedly, were it not for all of that shit that I went through, I don't know that I could be in this position I am in today.
Yeah, I guess I can relate to that. So one example of a tool like that I have now didn't have before. One thing I tend to do a lot is get in my own head and obsessively think about like a certain thing or topic, whatever it is.
Very normal.
Yep. So before, I would spend, not even kidding, like 4 or 5 hours just in my head on that one thing. But now I can catch myself within 5-10 minutes, be like, all right, Raj, you got to
put it away.
Stop that. Think about something else. Distract yourself. Learn some of the grounding techniques you've learned or use them. And yeah, just whatever works at that moment.
You know, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing because a lot of people don't know that they can learn coping mechanisms to life's problems, right?
Yeah.
They like put a Band-Aid on it. They put their head down and they pretend it doesn't exist and they shun it and they ignore it and it just makes matters worse. And I think what's one of the nice byproducts of the pandemic is I think there is like a renewed conversation around mental health and like how it's okay to not be okay. And you can ask people for help and you can get professional help. And just exactly what you just said is crucial in that being able to identify your faults and things that are wrong that you can then learn to cope with and fix.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is one of the positives from the pandemic is the mental health, I guess, acceptance, worldwide acceptance or universal acceptance. Because, it's something I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, I would not have been comfortable sharing some of the things I just said today.
Yeah.
Who knows? So
I mean, listen, man, I think it goes without saying that I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously. I mean, I've learned so much more about you. I have such a greater appreciation for you as a friend and a human being. And there's no question in my mind that someone is listening to this today who can relate to what you've said, who can relate to what we've discussed, right? This is life. Like at the end of the day, everyone goes through the same shit. Just some people have more tools in their tool belt to be able to deal with it. And that's okay. And like admitting that you need help is okay. Like all this stuff is very normal. Like if anything that is taken from this conversation today, it's like, it's okay to feel whatever you feel, but if it's bad, get help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dude, I have a very cheesy line. If you've been on my podcast, you're part of my family, and I know you've met my brother, and we've had a lot of fun conversations and good times together. But I'm just immensely appreciative of you and your friendship and coming on this podcast. And yeah, man, I'm just so very thankful, and thanks for coming on.
I appreciate that, John, and right back at you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you the past year, and it's just getting started. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Take care.